All right, we're interviewing Paul St. Jean today. And first on the list, Paul, is a question requesting your brief description of your life pre-injury, before a brain injury. What was your life all about?
Well, I was enjoying bachelorhood to the nth degree until I got waylaid and got married again at age 31. My father got married at 33. My goal was to reach at least 33, but I got waylaid on the way there. But I was an educator for a while. I was at the extra school system for 11 years as the teacher, coach. I went to Somersworth as assistant principal of the high school. And then I got married. And at that point, you really want to make more income. So I left that area and I went into personal recruiting. And I met a man, and he and I started a business together, which we ran for 11 years. And then my wife came down with a severe case of cancer at that point, breast cancer. My kids were 9 and 10 and a half. So I was traveling around the country a lot, probably 25, 30 weeks out of the year. So I sold my share of the company, stayed at home for approximately a year, and then I said, what will I do now? And my wife went through the episode very successfully. And I went down to look for jobs, and I found in this one case of an aerospace firm who wanted a office manager. I said, how will an aerospace firm ever hire a teacher and a former businessman? I said, but the man wanted somebody who would handle personnel, security. They're dealing with a lot of top secret works.
Right.
And it worked out very well. Also, my educational background helped out, because my first experience was with a chemistry major who was number 2 in the company. And she had a child who was a special ed child. And so the whole interview I had with her, about 45 minutes, 40 minutes was on her child. And she wanted to know how to deal with the school, what were the laws, how to deal with certain areas of difficulty she was having. So anyhow, as a result of that, I went to see the president of the company about 10 days later, and my name is St. Jean. His name is San Antonio, so he had a Spanish saint name. Yeah, he was a skier. Right. I was a skier. At the time, I had a full beard. He had a full beard. He drove a Peugeot. I drove a Peugeot. We hit it off very well. As I went for what started off to be a 1-hour interview. I left about 7.5 hours later.
Oh, my.
Served me lunch, and we went out to dinner and met several of the other engineers.
Not much of time management.
No. And the bottom line is that you end up, which I certainly was aware of, you hire people you like and trust. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily always hire the most qualified person. There were people who I thought were more qualified than I was applying for the position.
Yes.
But they either didn't have the people skills, or they were very abrupt, or not as likable, or whatever. I have no idea. But I was the final choice. Well, maybe I wasn't the first choice, but I was the final choice, and I stayed there about 15 years when I had my episode with medical issues. So it was worked out very well.
That's right.
So I was one of those individuals who could not hold a job, always changing jobs.
All right. The beat goes on.
Beat goes on, exactly.
All right. Second question requires a look at your injury. What, if you could describe your injury?
Well, as you are probably well aware, I was going in for a heart bypass operation. I was the 4th person in my family to need the bypass. We bad genes. I can't tell you anything else. We have produced a high level of cholesterol in my family. I was the 4th person to have a stroke in my family, so it's just, I won't say it's ingrained, but we inherited a lot of the genes issues. So I was going into the hospital to have the heart bypass, and I met with the doctor for day before I was entered into the hospital. He met with me, and we went over everything. He said, I don't anticipate any issues, but I should tell you, every time you go under the knife, there's always possibility of danger.
Right.
Anytime you have anesthesia into your body, there's always a possibility of complications that occur. He said, but it's about 2 or 3% of people have difficulty with the operation. He says, we do this. He said, I do this every day of the week. He said, most days I do 1 or 2 operations. He goes, on the average between 8 and 10 per week. He says, very safe procedure. He said, he said, you're a young man in relationship to his patients. And he said, you're quasi-healthy in terms of where I was. But he said, you shouldn't have anything to worry about. Famous last words. When they say, don't worry about it, worry. Because that was the last thing I recall. I got checked into the hospital the next day. I went in for the operation on Thursday. Woke up on Friday. However, it was the next Friday.
The same week?
No, it was 2 weeks later.
Right.
So I was in a coma for approximately just under 2 weeks, 13 days.
Wow.
So anytime they say, don't worry about it, worry. Now, I don't recall anything about 13 days.
Right.
They said I was really a horrible patient. But moral of the story is, if you're going to have a stroke, might as well have it in the hospital itself. It was when I was put on the heart bypass machine, which is a very controversial part of the heart bypass operation. That's when the stroke took place.
Oh, I see.
So potential was already there, but the trauma certainly aggravated the situation and took place at that moment.
How long ago was
Experience.
That was in the summer of 2001. Sorry.
Oh. Not that long ago, my friend. Wow.
How time flies.
Yes, indeed. Wow.
What happened when you woke up? What happened after that? You spent a lot of time in the hospital?
Actually, I was still at the Portsmouth Hospital. I spent 2 days there in the ICU. The very attractive and a very efficient young nurse, and I emphasize the word young because she was inexperienced, who was in physical therapy, came in and introduced herself to me and said, tomorrow we're going to help you walk around, get out of your bed and what have you. I said, are you sure you really want to do this? So maybe you ought to have a male around. And she said, oh, don't be so chauvinistic. Well, at that point I learned enough. I knew enough about women being married at that point that don't argue with them, just accept what they're saying. Let them prove themselves right or wrong, as the case may be. So the next day she shows up, said, Miss St. are you ready to move out of your bed? I said, well, you tell me. I said, is anybody else with you? There was nobody there besides herself. She said, well, I know all the angles. She said, I'm sure I'm strong enough to support you. And I said, well, I may be taller and maybe heavier than you anticipate. So are you prepared to deal with this? She said, I certainly am. So she helped me, I twisted off the bed, and she helped me get up on my feet. Now, keep in mind, I've been in coma for 2 weeks, so I could not support my own body weight.
Right.
So as she helped lift me off the bed, we both ended up on the ground. And she was trying to push the button which she couldn't get to, and calling for help. Finally, a couple of nurses came by and just saw us. I was in the ICU, it was all glass, so it was people were not very far away, so I was not in any danger. Probably the most serious issue I was worried is all the tubes that were sticking on my body were being pulled or yanked by the angle I was at. So the nurses and one of the nurses gave her, I'll say, holy hell. She said, I told you he was too big for you to handle. And I said, I told you so. Because I was about 250, and I was about 6'1", and she was maybe 5'2" at the most, probably 105 pounds at the most. I know she was very competent, but she just was inexperienced in terms of handling a big male who could not carry his own weight.
Exactly.
So she was accustomed to deal with people who were coming out of operations, but not out of comas. Consequently, I surprised her, and the weight and the mass was just too much for her to handle at the spot.
I think it was very much a learning experience for the young lady.
She was very nice. She was very competent, but we all learned the hard way.
Yeah.
And so I don't regret it. I mean, I was fine. She got me in a chair, and I was very comfortable.
Wow.
But so I sat in a chair by itself, like 15 minutes by itself, just to get through the episode itself. 'Cause I had no endurance, no ability to breathe comfortably. Just very major issue. But that was the fun part of it. Well, so after leaving ICU, I went to Anthem Hospital in Concord for about 6 weeks, where I was in rehab, and then I came back to Portsmouth, where I went to Portsmouth rehab on a normal basis.
I see. Is this your where you live?
I live in the Exeter area.
Oh, up north.
But this is the closest one. I mean, it was the close. It was where I was operated on originally, and before I was released from Anthem Hospital in Concord, they really wanted to know what my plans were.
Yeah.
That had never been, nothing wrong with that, but it was never been discussed before the event took place. So I had no thought to rehabilitation.
Exactly.
And where I would go, how I would do it. Luckily, I do know how to use a computer. My wife, at that point, my brain was in positive shape, but I was very much like a boat in water or an island in the ocean. I could not put thoughts together. So I knew I was in Concord, but I could not identify where Concord was.
Right.
I really thought I was in Laconia.
Yeah.
Who knows why? I have no idea why. Probably wanted to be in Laconia, so I thought it was Laconia. But I really didn't know how to put ideas together. Again, so my wife got on the computer, and we sent out emails to a lot of retired friends and unemployed wives, housewives, home givers, what have you. And luckily, one of the things I became very well aware of is that you can burn out friends by asking too many favors of a friend. But if you have a lot of friends, hopefully all of them can help you somewhat, and with very little effort on that part.
Yeah.
So
spread the.
Because I could not drive. I didn't drive for about 7 months till after the operation. So as a consequence, I needed to be driven to the rehab process and back. So through the email, I was able to contact a variety of friends, and they all had different schedules. So some could pick me up on Wednesday, some on Monday, others on Friday, others Thursday, what have you.
Sure.
Some could not pick me up one week, they could another week. So between, I would say, about 10 and 12 friends, I was able to have transportation every day. And it worked out well for them and for us, because I was able to take them all out for dinner as a thank you after the fact. But also at the time was the effort on their part was not a major effort. It was certainly an effort on their part, but I did not interfere with that timelines. As a matter of fact, many of the wives who gave me rides enjoyed coming to Portsmouth because they would go shopping during the day.
Sure.
A very quiet time, and then pick me up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, go home and take my nap.
Convert their day into a bit of fun.
Yeah. And that's how I went through rehab group.
All right.
But rehab was very positive. Whether it be Anthem or the Portsmouth Rehab Center in Newington, I thought the help I got was very good. Everything except the food. I lost weight, which was a positive thing. But I lost about 20 pounds at the hospital.
Wow.
But the medical care I got certainly was excellent.
It really, it worked.
It worked.
That's no
They were very
question
well
about it.
trained,
Excellent.
very skilled, and very appreciative of their efforts.
Well, let's focus then on life following your injury. How life has been affected since your injury? Where did you go from there?
Well,
maybe that's where SteppingStones.
That's a good question. I often ask myself because I can't recall parts of the past, as you're well aware of. When you have a stroke, the frontal lobe is affected. Frontal lobe is part of the young brain. As a consequence, you forget all short-term memory issues that registered originally. So I don't recall everything that happened to me. I can recall things that occurred a long time ago.
Exactly.
Because that's part of the old brain areas. But the new areas are really hard to regenerate.
Yes, very challenging. That's
very
for sure.
challenging.
Yeah.
And I just find the issue a difficult one to associate, because I recall certain episodes occurring, but I don't associate every episode in relationship to the previous one. So I recall bits of information, but no connection between the two bits. So the axons in my brain were not firing properly. Luckily, I was in a hospital, as I say, so the medication was put into my body fairly quickly. Because when you have a stroke, if the medication can be put into your body within about 3 hours, the ability to recoup your skills or knowledge is very high. But the longer you go without medication, the more difficult it is to regenerate the past episodes. So the only thing that has occurred is I still have a lot of aphasia, which is the inability to pronounce words properly.
Oh, is that so?
But luckily, as a former teacher, I had a fairly high vocabulary.
Yeah, you can find new words.
And I was able to recall certain words. So one of the things I have found is that if you generate the word through your own mind or your own thoughts or ideas, I can recreate the word, and at that point I can recall it and use it very effectively.
Right.
But I don't recall. Recollection is always more difficult than recognition. As a consequence, my ability to recall things I don't see are just very difficult. But ability to recognize things are very successful.
Very easier.
It's a gradual process. Every day or every week or every month, I see improvement. But as you well know, it's never fast enough for yourself. Because everyone who sees me says, "Oh, Paul, you look great. Everything's back to normal." They invite me out to have a beer with them.
Exactly.
I'm not one to turn down beer or alcohol very easily, but I am not back to where I was. And I recognize that in many different ways, either endurance ability, ability to golf,
that's right,
ability to ski, my balance. I used to ski, as you are aware, in Colorado very effectively with my son, down Double Diamond Mountains. Now I barely can get on cross country ski.
Yes, I hear you.
So it's part of my recreation has gone away, and it may come. I may be able to regenerate part of those things, but not all.
Yes. You may have to set your sights a little lower or a different direction.
Well, that's part of my issues.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to set my sights any different than where they were.
I see.
So I really, I fight myself on the issue because I recognize my skills are not where they were 10 years before or even 5 years ago.
There's a sense of comfort that you are seeking to explore and seeking to experience.
Very much the case, Hank. I try to read as much as I can to try to recoup my vocabulary and try to just improve my ability to think well, connect issues, play word games. One of the things I enjoy about SteppingStones is brain power, because it forces you to think, whether you're playing Scrabble or picture it or whatever the case may be. You're at least using the brain itself, and the more we use it, the better.
It's vital.
It becomes more attuned to normal events.
SteppingStones has recognized that and helped us achieve those lost talents.
Very much the case. And sometimes we need just the encouragement, because we don't do it by ourselves.
Right.
And
Right.
as much as if you're fortunate enough to still be married, or if you, assuming you were married to begin with, your partner may not appreciate difficulty you have through going through the episodes. I'm still, one of the things I used to pride myself on is my ability to control my temper and be very even-handed on how you address issues. Now I find myself getting very short-tempered on some things, and I really find myself more mad at myself than others about my inability to comprehend things. Or
Right.
I would say very quickly, I didn't do that. When I think again, I did do that. And I just momentarily forgot. I had no idea why I did that. But
Right.
so I really am more upset with myself, as most of us are.
It's quite the growth experience.
No.
It's challenging.
Especially as you all know, when you don't plan on these issues, take a right-hand detour due to medical reasons, that things you never thought would evolve or happen to you.
Exactly.
There's always going to be somebody else, somebody who's older, an uncle, a grandfather, an older friend, but not yourself. And we certainly know very different now.
Well, all of a sudden, yes, life.
Because we have people here who have had strokes from pregnancy, high tension, hypertension, I guess is a better phrase, to older people. We go from age 28 to 68 as the members here.
Yes, in no time at all. Very good. Let me see if we have more to cover here. I think we can look at these goals. What are some goals that you have for yourself in the future?
All my goals are really short term. I think I've reached. I don't think. I know I've reached the stage where one of the first things I do when I open the paper, I go to the obituary section. That we all do. We're all guilty of doing that, but I do it much more often than I used to do.
What did you say? I missed it.
I go to the obituaries.
The obituary, no.
And I used to laugh, or I used to smile when people told me that they did the same thing. And I said, "Why do that?" He goes, "It'll happen to you." It has happened to me. And unfortunately, I've seen a few names that I recall, that I recognize.
Yeah.
And when I get my college publications in 4 times a year,
Right.
I'm now starting to see more names that I recognize, that some are in my class, and some were people I just knew during the 4 years of college.
Yeah.
So it's just an event that used to be, was always there, but it was not high on my list of important things to consider.
It's amazing how
Now
old
the
those,
priorities have altered
classmates
themselves.
gotten.
Exactly. And very much the case. Very much the case. Believe me. So I really don't answer your question. I have chosen not to have too many long-term goals, because I'm not sure what the long-term future may bring, may develop.
Yeah.
I deal with short-term goals.
Right.
And
and you've been able to adjust to that way of living.
yes.
Short term, and, you.
Often people say, "What are you going to do next summer or next winter," as the case may be, and I go, "I'll deal with that when I get there."
Exactly. It's not important for me.
It's not important to me right now. Exactly. If it's this fall, right now, the most I think about between now and the Christmas holidays. And my short-term goal is to go to Colorado in December.
Right.
Long-term goals, get warm again, which comes after Christmas when I go to my home in Florida. So, but I'm not even thinking of that really right now, because to me that's a long ways away.
Excellent.
So
right.
I choose not to make long-term goals
You're
part of
doing
my
right.
process.
They're doing it right, Paul. The second question, or the next question, focuses here on communication challenges. What does it? precisely. So what does it make you feel when you communicate? How does it make you feel when you are communicating with others, I assume?
Well, I think you can.
How happy does that make you, or how sad does
Well,
that
happy would
make
be
you?
the wrong word. I
Yeah.
think I'm really unfulfilled, or I'm not satisfied with my ability to communicate well. And I think you can obviously hear that. And certainly, I think we're all tougher on ourselves than others may be of us. Because I know how I used to sound, how I used to think. As a matter of fact, when I was a teacher many years ago, unfortunately, students gave me one day a dictionary. They said, "Mr. St. Jean, this is for you as a
really?
Christmas gift." It was sort of a joke in hand, because I used, as you're well aware, I used to be a psychology instructor.
Yeah.
So I used, part of my goal was to introduce new words, new phrases, new ways of thinking, new paradigms of association of words into their lives, and to try to increase their ability to think differently. And so I was given this as a gift, as a joke within a joke.
Right.
So I'm really, I would say I'm not satisfied with my ability to think, also my ability to write. The stroke also had an effect. A man's handwriting is never good. At best, it's readable.
At best,
And at this point, it's really, I would identify my handwriting as being poor. You can read it, but I find it, I have to take a lot more time to write the words.
Yes,
I go back to the old skill of forgetting the script writing. I print my letters, which is not a sign of intelligence, but a sign of inability to make yourself well known in written form. So you really regress back to a previous form of writing as a child that people can read. So that's really, again, that's a long-term process to improve upon.
That communication skill has, I think, diminished, this writing.
Oh, it has, yes.
You know, except that using email isn't quite writing, but it's putting words on.
But I do find if I'm in a intelligent conversation, for example, I was in a brain power class on Monday, which a lot of cognitive thinking was going on.
Yes.
And I was able to explain why perceptions were why we were experiencing the eye pictures that the person was, the intern was showing to us. And the intern knew the picture, but didn't know why we saw the things we were looking at. And I was able to explain the whole concept of learning and how cognitive development occurred in human beings, and then why we were seeing or experiencing what we were.
What we were, exactly.
So I think when I'm in the right environment, the ability to think well returns. But if I'm not, don't use it, you lose it.
That's right.
If you don't talk intelligently, forget the words, you begin to lose the ability to communicate effectively.
Perfect, indeed. Well, we've come down, I think, Paul, to the final.
Cross-examination is almost over, you mean?
We have arrived at the end. No exam in this.
Best thing, pass-fail.
Nicely done. All right.
Any question by you, Mick?
I have a question. If you could recommend to someone who hasn't had a brain injury, because no interviews talked about the planning, actually going through, and people plan for how their funeral will be done, how they want all this stuff, but they kind of forget that whole point where it's like, okay, I have kids, and okay, now I'm elderly. How can you? What advice could you give now that you have had a stroke without the planning for people that maybe are still in that it can't happen to me phase?
I guess I would suggest that the individual try not to scare their caregivers, whether it be a child, husband, wife, brother, sister, whatever the case may be. and probably talk about a lot of what ifs. They should sit down, open up a bottle of beer or a good bottle of scotch, put plenty of ice in it, and just talk about things, whether it be inability to walk, think. Same way you evolve a living will, about whether or not you should, what would happen upon your demise. I think the same thing should occur so that your will can be carried out, so that it makes life easier for the caregiver and the receiver, that things are happening the way they would want them to. So, and do it in an unemotional way. So you have to do when you're not surrounded by emergencies all around you, before the time arrives. We have no control when the time occurs, but do it in a manner, a very relaxed atmosphere, when you're healthy, and be able to communicate your ideas to those who are going to be caregivers. I think that'll make life easier for the caregiver and again the recipient at a later stage in life. Won't make things perfect, but make things more acceptable and more receptive to you during your time. And if you recover, you can tell a person you really appreciate that your thoughts are being carried forward. If you don't recover, at least you were comfortable going out the door.
At least it was talked about.
Exactly. And should be, I think it's really important to do it before the emergency arrives. Don't do it in a hurried or emotional atmosphere. Do it in a very calm, relaxed atmosphere. Be comfortable and just talk about things that may or may not even occur, but how you would like things to be treated with.
I think that's a very good topic that you touched upon.
Well, it's sort of like when people go to wakes, you don't even know what person won as a ceremony. For example, when my in-laws both passed away a year ago, I felt it was important to have closure as part of the whole process. So we had a memorial service, but both of the parents did not want any elaboration about the death, about their passing away. But they had really done part of the greatest generation. We had somebody my mother-in-law was a member of the Republican Party of Illinois, of Chicago, had pictures of her and Richard Nixon. I'm not a Richard Nixon lover, but she was a very important person in Cook County at the time. Right. My father-in-law had been a submariner in World War II, and it had pictures of him in the uniform, and he was a very different man at that point, before my wife was even born. Yeah. But I thought it was important that people see these things and be able to put closure to the whole episode of their lives. I did not feel comfortable with just putting it in the ground, cremating them, putting it in the ground, and that's the end of that. I just felt very uncomfortable about the whole thing. But also for my family. I thought it was important for them to recognize the place they stood and where they were in the line of generations and how things were.
Family, yeah.
So to me that was a significant issue. And I would agree with the same sort of thing here. It should be talked about, thought about. You may change your mind and just do it in a very non-emotional way. I think you'd all be more comfortable with the results a later time.
Well, thank you. Some very powerful advice.
Very good. Very good, yes.
Thanks for asking me to be here today.
Time well spent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very good.